Good morning and welcome to the Fund It Fast Chat. I am Rochelle Butler, the Energy Manager with the San Joaquin Valley Clean Energy Organization. As always, I appreciate you all being with us here on this lovely Tuesday morning. We are going to get to it in just a second, but first we're going to take care of our housekeeping. Please make note that all of your microphones have been muted upon joining the call. This is simply to minimize background noise. If you have any questions at all, I highly encourage you to go ahead and submit those questions using the chat box. You can do so at any point during the presentation. As always, we will make time toward the end of the call to address any questions you might have. Finally, I would like to invite everyone to go ahead and connect with us. If you, let's see, you can connect with us on any one of our many platforms. If you're on social media, you can find us on Twitter, on Instagram, you can find us on Spotify, or you can just reach out the old-fashioned way via email or by telephone. So we're very accessible to you. And don't worry, if you can't get all that down, you can find access to any of our resources by going to our website, and that's at sjvcleanenergy.org. Once again, that is sjvcleanenergy.org. And with that, we are going to go ahead and jump in. So I just want to take a moment here at the top of our conversation to point out some resources for you all. I always try to loop in other resources or past fast chats where we've covered similar topics or similar types of funding sources or vehicles. This morning's Fund It Fast Chat is about something kind of like a community-based grant program. So it only makes sense that I would point out other grant programs that are kind of similar in objectivity to this one. So we have for Fast Chat number 20, the EPIC grants, the CalTrans, Sustainable Transportation Planning grants. Please keep in mind that all of the programs that you see here on your screen have cycled at least one time, and some of them cycle annually. So if you are looking for some opportunities to support, development within your community, these are a pretty good place to start. And just as a friendly reminder, all of those fast chats are posted to our YouTube page. It would help us out so much if while you're over there checking out those things, go ahead and give our videos a like or subscribe to our channel. That helps other folks just like yourself find our content and do their own projects. So good things come from that. Okay, so now the topic at hand, which is the Equitable Community Revitalization Grant. And I really try to kind of time our fast chats in a way so that the timelines line up so that once you hear the fast chat and make a decision whether you want to look into it further, you'll have time to act upon those opportunities. And I'll be totally honest with you, I almost missed it this time, but not quite. This grant program has a pre-qualifying application deadline that was actually on December 9th, but not to worry. Applicants are encouraged to participate in that pre-application process, but it's not a pre-qualifier. So don't worry, if you didn't make that part, you can still participate in the full round of applications in January. And I'm only telling you all about the pre-qualification period because if you have any friends or colleagues that did have the opportunity to participate, it might be worthwhile to kind of talk to them about maybe some of the feedback that they were able to get during that pre-qualifying application round. So just some food for thought for you. I also do want to add one more caveat to this one. There will be additional cycles of this program. So this will be an ongoing thing, and I'll talk a little bit more later about upcoming opportunities related to this one. So what is the Equitable Community Revitalization Grants Program, and how does it potentially benefit our partners? First, it is administered by the Department of Toxic Substances Control Cleanup in Vulnerable Communities Initiative. That's a mouthful, but specifically the Office of Brownfields. If anyone on the call doesn't quite know what exactly a brownfield is, it has an official definition put out by the EPA. It's a brownfield. Brownfield is a property, the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse of which may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. So the overall goal of this program is to provide funding to assist communities that are burdened by lands that may be idled, that may be contaminated and are expensive to either investigate, to clean up, or to reuse. There is potential to reuse these properties for like parkland and green spaces, also for sustainable commercial enterprises and housing, which I'm sure I don't need to mention can have a huge positive impact on community development. So those lands can be reused for good. So I did kind of touch very briefly on timelines here, but let's go into a little bit more detail on what we're looking at for timelines. So as I mentioned a moment ago, we did sort of surpass the pre-qualifying application deadline period, but it's perfectly okay if you did not participate in that. It does not preclude you from submitting a full application, and the deadline for that full application is going to be in January. So let's see, okay, so folks that did participate in the pre-qualification process will start hearing feedback and getting pre-qualification notifications sometime during this month. And again, I am sharing this information for you just in case you'd like to coordinate with some of your other counterparts out there. Next, we are looking at January 2022 for the initial launch of the full application opening, as I mentioned. This application period is going to be open for about 6 to 8 weeks. So we're looking at March 22 for the application close if everything goes according to the schedule. And the first grantees will be receiving notifications that they've received awards. That will happen in early April. And then finally, as I mentioned, the future funding opportunities will be coming out in spring of 2022. So I'm going to keep an eye out on that and be notifying you guys through whatever channels possible about those upcoming opportunities. So now you may be asking yourself, who are the people that should be looking at this grant program? Like, who should apply? So definitely we are looking at local governments. These are our cities, counties, municipalities, even townships would be eligible, school districts, special districts, intrastate districts, councils of government are also eligible to apply, tribes are eligible to apply, and finally, qualified 501c3 organizations. Okay, so now we know who. Let's talk a little bit about what. So what kinds of sites are we looking at? So in order to be eligible, the site must meet one or more of the following criteria. Okay, so first on the list we have the site must be identified as a potential site through one or more of either the assessor's parcel numbers, or more commonly known as APN, or another acceptable identifier. The site can meet the federal definition of a brown site. Remember, we talked about the definition of a brown site at the top of the presentation. In case you missed it, it's a real property, the expansion or reuse of which may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance or a pollutant or contaminant. These potential sites can be affected by any number of the following things. For example, it could be a site where there was a factory that was there or nearby, a plating shop, crop farms, dairy farms, cattle ranches, dry cleaners even. It, could be part of or near like a mining site. Properties with minimal historical information. Sometimes there's a property where you just don't know what was there, but you have to do your due diligence to make sure it's safe to build on. Abandoned buildings and vacant properties, or properties near those with a known environmental contamination. So there's a lot of things that fit within that criteria there. Moving along, if that site is located on a census tract where the CalEnviroscreen 3.0 score is 75 or higher. These are high poverty areas with the highest pollution burdens and are also slated for reuse. Sites that are proposed for use directly benefiting a tribe, or, and here's the big or here, if you have a site that is located on a census tract that is below, that has a score, a CalEnviroscreen score of less than 75, and it also supports rural communities, tribes, and planned uses that provide significant benefits to vulnerable communities, those would also qualify. So by significant benefits to rural communities, they're talking about a few things specifically. So if the planned use for the site is a nonprofit community service, health clinic, or medical services facility, it could be a cultural institution, uses supporting unhoused or underhoused populations, social services, other uses with significant benefits to disadvantaged, low-income community or vulnerable population, or housing, or if it's slated to be used for housing that's planned for lower-income households at an affordable housing cost. And that affordable housing cost is defined by the California Department of Housing and Community Development. So there's a lot there, but there's a lot of different ways that the site can qualify, I think, is the main takeaway here. Okay, so I'm not really sure how many folks on the call regularly review CalEnviroscreen, or if they really know what that means, but I have a graphic here to let you know like what those sites look like that are in the 75 score or higher. Hopefully you can see the legend here, but the areas in California that have a score of 75 or higher are going to be in the darker orange and the red areas. So, I mean, you may notice that that covers much of the Central Valley and, a lot of area going up into Stockton. So I just wanted to give everyone an idea of what this looks like. However, don't worry if your area is not in the reddish parts of the map. There are plenty of disadvantaged communities in just about everyone's backyard. So it's not an automatic disqualifier. Another caveat I do want to add here, though, is that CalEnviroscreen was just recently updated. And so CalEnviroscreen 4.0 was actually published, and it was published, I believe, late this past summer. However, for the purposes of this grant program and this application, they are going by 3.0, which is the previous. So that may change things a little bit for some of you looking to apply. Okay, so let's look at some costs that qualify. So I know I have a lot on the screen here, but I just want to start this portion by saying this is a reimbursement grant program, and all costs that are billed to the program must be strictly for the implementation of SCRG approved activities for one or more of the three areas you see on your screen. So the three areas we have here are the community-wide assessment, the site-specific investigation, or a site-specific cleanup. And just below that, you can see the grant award ranges as well. They start anywhere from $80,000, and depending on which area your grant falls within, they go up to $300,000 or $3 million, or even as much as $7 million. So just depending on where you fall, for your specific project. So, okay, I'm not going to go into like a lot of detail on each of them, but I just want you to come away with a good understanding. I will say, I'll just touch briefly on some of the categories specific. So, for example, the community-wide assessment category, this would be the area you would fall within if your project covers 4 or more sites within a study area. So recipients of this area of the grant may use funds for preliminary environmental and land use planning, including items that you see listed there on your screen, like GIA mapping, AAI or phase 1 investigations, etc. The site-specific environmental investigations includes cleanup planning at a specific site that's slated for reuse, as well as items on this list. So the AAI or phase 1 investigations, preliminary endangerment assessments, and so on and so forth. And finally, the site-specific cleanup, which includes planning, implementation, and reporting costs, as well as those associated with the purchase of insurance that's required to carry out the environmental activities such as pollution legal liability. That gives you an idea of the types of projects. And then finally, I just want to touch briefly on how to go about applying. So all applications must be submitted using the DTSC application portal. And when you look at the literature, they like to call it Flux. So you'll see that term often in the literature, but it's just referring to what they call their portal. You will need to register before accessing the portal. And then once you start your application, there's a number of things that they will be looking for in terms of the information you provide. So eligibility, they're looking to have you explain how your organization as well as the site is eligible within the parameters of the grant program. Application contacts is pretty self-explanatory, who they can contact in case they have questions or need follow-up information about your application. The application type, you have to specify which project category your project fits in, and I just covered that briefly on the last slide. They want to know a little bit about your site, the site information. So this refers to the location, the area of the site, you know, how much acreage is included, and the CalEnviroscreen score. They would like to know why the applicant has determined that the site may be contaminated, so some additional justification there, the scope of activities, estimated budget, all of those things have to be included. So it's quite a bit of information, but again, make sure you have all of those items together before you go about submitting your application. And I think that's it. That is all I have in terms of content about the program specifically. I'm going to take a really brief pause here for any questions. So if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and submit your questions in the chat box. I will respond to any questions. If I don't quite have the complete answer, I'll be sure to follow up in our follow-up email. But going along with that, while you're working on those questions, I would just like to remind everyone to please look out for that follow-up email after our call today. We usually try to get that out by early afternoon, but that email will include links to all of the related fast chats we talked about earlier, as well as a link to the recording of this fast chat. And we also make sure that we add links for links that'll take you to any of the pertinent information that we talked about this morning, like where to find the portal and the applications and all that stuff. So all that stuff we try to wrap up and give to you in one neat little package. So look for that probably early this afternoon. And then lastly, I just want to take a quick second and just remind everyone to add us to your email contacts. We want to make sure that you're receiving our communications so that you can stay up to date on what's going on around the partnership. And that email is info@sjvgovernor.org. cleanenergy.org. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick peek at the chat box, and I don't see any questions there, so I hope that means that I explained everything clearly. If anything comes up after the fact, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to talk you through any questions that you may have. I encourage everyone listening to please share the Fast Chat with your friends and colleagues. You never know how this information might help someone out with their project. So what's next for the Funded Fast Chat? Well, we would just like to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a happy and very safe New Year. We will see you back here on January 11th for our first Fast Chat of the new year, and we'll be releasing that topic very, very soon. And I would just like to thank everyone so much for being with us this morning, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Everybody stay safe, and I hope you stay healthy.